The crystal towers of Vex Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. This planet was the center of everything important in the galaxy. 47 different alien species sent their leaders here to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. They called themselves the Galactic Council, and they had kept peace for 300 years. But there was one species they refused to accept: humans. Captain Menu stood in the docking bay of Vex Prime, looking at the massive ships from other worlds. His own ship, the Resilience, looked like junk compared to them. It was an old cargo hauler that Earth had turned into their only diplomatic vessel. The paint was chipped, and the engines made strange noises, but it was all humanity could afford. "They won't even see us," said Doctor, adjusting her worn briefcase. She was Earth's best scientist who studied alien life. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her clothes were neat but old. "We've been here 6 times, Minu. 6 times they've turned us away." Lieutenant checked his uniform one more time. He was young, barely 30, but he had flown missions that would make most alien pilots refuse to get in a cockpit. "Maybe this time will be different," he said, though his voice didn't sound hopeful. It wasn't different. Ambassador met them in a service hallway, not even in a proper meeting room. She was from the Empire, tall and covered in silver scales that reflected the corridor lights. Her 4 eyes looked at the humans with something close to disgust. "Your application has been indefinitely postponed," said. Her voice was cold and mechanical through the translator. "The Council has reviewed Earth's history. You destroyed your own planet's environment before you even reached the stars. You fight wars among yourselves. You use weapons we banned thousands of years ago. You are not ready for galactic civilization." Minu felt his jaw tighten. "We've changed. We've unified. We've rebuilt our world and colonized 15 systems. We have 3 billion citizens who deserve representation." 3 billion primitives, corrected. "The Council's decision is final. Please leave Vex Prime within the hour." She walked away without another word, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Doctor put a hand on Minu's shoulder. "Let's go home," she said quietly. On the long journey back to Earth, Minu sat in his captain's chair and stared at the stars. Humanity had worked so hard to reach them. After the environmental collapse of the 21st century, people had finally come together. They fixed their planet. They stopped their wars. They built ships and reached for the cosmos. And the galaxy had slammed the door in their face. Back on Earth's moon, in a monitoring station that orbited the satellite, was watching her screens when something impossible appeared. She was an astrophysicist, someone who studied space and stars, and she had been tracking unusual readings near the nebula for weeks. The numbers on her screen suddenly spiked. Energy readings went off the charts. Quantum fluctuations that shouldn't exist started appearing in patterns she had only seen in theoretical papers. "No, no, no," whispered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She ran the calculations 3 times. Each time the answer was the same. A dimensional rift was forming. She immediately sent a message to the Galactic Council. It was urgent, marked with every priority code Earth knew. She explained the readings, attached all her data, and warned them that something was coming through from another dimension. The Council's response came back within an hour. It was automated, not even from a real person. "Earth's scientific credentials are not recognized by the Council. This message has been filed under unverified reports and will be reviewed if resources become available. Thank you for your concern." Stared at the message in disbelief. She ran to her supervisor, a man named who had once been a soldier before becoming the head of Earth's defense ministry. He was old now, with hair and scars on his hands from wars humanity had fought against itself. "They're not listening," said, showing him the data. "Something is coming and they won't even look at my research." Studied the numbers. He had seen enough combat to know when something was wrong. "Send this to every human colony," he ordered. "Get our ships ready. If the Council won't protect us, we'll have to protect ourselves. Against what? Asked. I don't know, admitted. But whatever comes through that rift, it won't care that we're not members of their precious council. In the military command center on Vex Prime, sensors detected the same quantum fluctuations that had seen. A junior officer reported it to his commander, who barely glanced at it. Stellar phenomenon, the commander said, dismissing it. The nebula is old and unstable. These readings are normal. The junior officer wanted to argue, but he kept quiet. In the military, you didn't question your superiors. Far away near the nebula, space began to tear. It started small, just a crack in reality itself, but it was growing. And on the other side of that crack, something ancient and hungry had noticed the light of the galaxy. It had found new prey. Captain Minu reached Earth 3 days later. He filed his report with the human government, another failure to add to the list. But he also heard about its warning and its preparations. They dismissed us again, Minu told his crew. But maybe that's going to save our lives. We're not part of their system. We're not dependent on their protection. If something comes, we'll face it the way humans always have. How's that? Asked. Minu smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Alone, angry, and too stubborn to die. None of them knew how soon they would need that stubbornness. The rift was opening wider with every passing hour, and the thing on the other side was almost ready to cross over. The rift tore open like a wound in space itself. One moment there was nothing but the swirling gases of the nebula. The next moment, reality broke apart in a flash of impossible colors that made observers scream and cover their eyes. What came through was something the galaxy had never seen before. The null swarm didn't look like ships or creatures. It looked like darkness that moved with purpose. Thousands of organic masses that absorbed light, that consumed everything they touched. They spread out from the rift like ink in water, moving faster than anything that size should move. The first colony they reached was New Harvest, a farming world home to 2 million people from the species. The colonists saw the dark shapes approaching and tried to send a distress call. The swarm reached them before the message finished transmitting. New Harvest simply disappeared. The planet was still there, but it was empty. No buildings, no life, no atmosphere, just bare rock like the world had been erased. The Galactic Council finally took notice. Ambassador stood in the council chamber as alarms blared throughout Vex Prime. The Empire will handle this threat, she announced with complete confidence. Our fleet is the finest in the galaxy. We will destroy these invaders within the week. The fleet was impressive. 5,000 warships, each equipped with weapons that could crack a planet in half. Energy shields that could withstand the heat of a sun. Targeting systems so advanced they could hit a target from 3 star systems away. They launched their attack at the Meridian system, where the swarm had stopped to consume 3 more colonies. The battle lasted 47 minutes. The ships fired their energy weapons, plasma beams that could melt asteroids, particle cannons that disrupted molecular bonds, quantum torpedoes that phased through normal matter. The swarm absorbed every single shot. The dark masses seemed to drink the energy, growing larger with each attack. Then they started to change. The swarm adapted, transforming parts of itself into weapons that fired the same energy back at the ships. The fleet commander ordered a retreat when he had lost half his ships. Only 800 vessels made it back to space. The rest were consumed, their advanced technology turned into more swarm mass. On Earth, Minu received the news from a clerk who worked in the Council's communications center. Was from a small species called the mouse-like beings that the Council mostly ignored, but had a good heart, and he didn't think it was right to let billions die. The encrypted message was simple and terrifying. The Council is evacuating their core worlds. They're abandoning the outer systems. Your colonies are in the outer systems. You have maybe 2 weeks before the swarm reaches you. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more. Minyu called an emergency meeting with Earth's government. They gathered in a bunker deep under what used to be called Geneva, now just known as Unity City. The room was cramped and the equipment was old, but it was secure. "We have 11 colonies in the outer systems," said President Sora, a woman who had led Earth through some of its darkest days. "That's 2,300,000,000 people. We don't have ships to evacuate them all." "And where would we go?" asked Admiral, the head of Earth's small military fleet. He was a short man with sharp eyes and scars on his face from the resource wars. "If we run, the swarm will just follow. If we stay, we die." Stood up, his old uniform still fit, though it was than it used to be. "There's a third option," he said. "We fight." "With what?" Sora demanded. "Our fleet is 200 ships. They had 5,000 and they got destroyed." "The fought with energy weapons," replied. "High technology that the swarm can absorb and adapt to. We don't have that kind of technology." Doctor understood first. "You want to use our old weapons, the ones the Council banned." "The Council isn't here," said flatly. "And I'm tired of following the rules of people who left us to die. We have nuclear weapons. We have kinetic. We have chemical and biological agents that we developed during our wars. The Council calls them primitive and barbaric." "Maybe that's exactly what we need," Minyu said slowly. "The swarm adapts to advanced technology, but can it adapt to a chunk of metal traveling at a fraction of light speed? Can it absorb radiation from a fusion bomb?" Admiral was already calculating in his head. "Our weapons are designed to fight other humans, other biological targets. If this swarm is organic, even partially, our banned weapons might actually hurt it." "It's a terrible risk," said Sora. "Living is a risk," shot back. "I say we take it." The vote was unanimous. Earth would stand and fight. The call went out across all human colonies. Every ship that could fly, every weapon that could fire, every person who could fight. They gathered at Threshold Station, humanity's furthest outpost, the last defense before the swarm would reach the main colonies. Doctor worked around the clock with her team. She studied the limited data they had on the swarm, looking for weaknesses. A young combat medic named helped her, bringing medical knowledge about how biological systems worked. "It's alive," said, staring at blurry images of the swarm. "At least partially. It has organic components. That means it needs certain chemicals to function." "And chemicals can be poisoned," added. They started developing weapons that the galaxy hadn't seen in. Chlorine gas bombs, nerve agents, biological warfare that the civilized species had agreed was too horrible to use. Humans had no such agreements with the swarm. Lieutenant trained with the other pilots. They practiced maneuvers that would kill most alien species from the G-forces alone. Humans were heavy, evolved on a planet with high gravity. Their bodies could take punishment that would turn into paste. "We're going to fly in close," told his squadron. "Closer than their sensors expect. We're going to be unpredictable because our computers are worse than theirs. We're going to use manual controls and human instinct." "That sounds insane," said one pilot. "Good," replied with a grim smile. "Insane is hard to predict." The swarm reached Threshold Station on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. 200 human ships faced a mass of darkness that stretched across the entire star system. Admiral gave the order that would change everything. "All ships fire at will. Show them what dismissed primitives can do." The Battle of Threshold Station had begun, and for the first time since the swarm entered this galaxy, something fought back that it couldn't simply consume. The first human ship to fire was a converted mining vessel called the Pickaxe. It had been designed to break apart asteroids, so its main weapon was simple, that threw chunks of tungsten at incredible speeds. The metal slug hit a swarm mass at 30% of light speed. Unlike the energy weapons they had used, This was just solid matter with enormous kinetic energy behind it. The swarm couldn't absorb it. The slug punched straight through, leaving a burning hole. The swarm mass writhed and split apart, trying to adapt. That's when the second wave hit. Nuclear missiles, the kind that Earth had almost destroyed itself with centuries ago, streaked across space. They detonated in brilliant flashes of fusion fire. The radiation washed over the swarm, and this time, something different happened. The dark masses began to shrink. They couldn't absorb raw atomic radiation the way they absorbed controlled energy beams. It burned them from the inside out. "It's working," shouted someone on the Resilience's bridge. Minyu watched his screens in amazement as the swarm that had destroyed 5,000 ships began to retreat from 200 human vessels. But the victory was costly. The swarm adapted quickly. It learned to dodge the slower-moving physical projectiles. It started targeting the nuclear missiles before they could detonate, and when human ships got too close, it simply threw mass at them like a club. Ships crumpled under the impacts. Lieutenant led his fighter squadron in a desperate maneuver that no sane pilot would attempt. They flew directly into the swarm mass, weaving between the dark tendrils at speeds that made their instruments scream. "Deploy chemical payloads on my mark," said, his voice steady despite pulling 8. 3, 2, 1 mark. Canisters of chlorine gas and nerve agents exploded inside the swarm. Doctor had been right. The organic parts of the swarm needed specific chemistry to function. The chemicals they used disrupted that chemistry violently. Entire sections of the swarm began to die, falling apart into dust that dispersed in the vacuum of space. But Squadron paid the price. Of the 20 fighters that went in, only 6 came back out. The rest were caught by swarm tendrils and crushed. Admiral watched the battle from his flagship, the Defiance. He had fought in the resource wars, in the Unity conflicts, in every major battle that humanity had inflicted on itself. He knew how to win ugly. "All ships focus fire on the section hit," he ordered, "and nukes pour everything into that wound. We're not trying to kill it all at once. We're carving it up piece by piece." The human fleet concentrated their fire. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't the precise, beautiful warfare that the Council species practiced. It was brutal, savage, and effective. The swarm mass at Threshold Station began to collapse. The remaining pieces retreated back toward the nebula, leaving behind clouds of dead organic matter. Humanity had won its first battle. Of the 200 ships that started the fight, 97 remained. 20,000 humans had died, but they had stopped the unstoppable. On Earth, a young communications officer made a decision that would change the galaxy. She was supposed to just monitor the battle and send reports to Earth's government. Instead, she broadcast the entire battle on every frequency humans could access. The footage spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that the Council protected suddenly saw something impossible. The primitive humans were winning where the advanced had failed. Within hours, its broadcast had been picked up by thousands of worlds. The Council tried to shut it down, but they were too slow. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched humans fight with weapons that should have been obsolete, with tactics that were supposedly barbaric, and win. Doctor worked with in a makeshift laboratory aboard the Resilience. They dissected samples of dead swarm material that had been collected from the battlefield. "It's beautiful in a horrible way," said, looking through her microscope. "The swarm is like a virus and a predator combined. It's designed to absorb advanced technology and use it, but it's vulnerable to basic chemistry because it never encountered a species that still used it. The Council banned these weapons so long ago that the swarm never adapted to them," added. "We're fighting with tools so old they're new again." Their research was immediately shared with every human ship and colony. Soon, production facilities across Earth systems began manufacturing chemical weapons and conventional explosives at an unprecedented rate. The news reached Vex Prime, and the council chamber erupted in chaos. Ambassador stood before the High Council, her silver scales dull with stress. "The humans are using banned weapons," she reported. "Chemical agents, biological warfare, uncontrolled nuclear devices. They're violating every civilized standard of combat." "They're also winning," said council member, "a being of pure energy contained in a crystal shell, which is more than we can say for your fleet." "This is barbarism," insisted. "This is survival," shot back. "The swarm is 3 weeks from reaching our core worlds. The humans are holding it back with weapons we call primitive. Perhaps we were wrong about what civilization means." The debate raged for hours while the swarm continued its advance. More colonies fell. More species were consumed. The Council's remaining military forces tried to fight using their advanced weapons and continued to fail. Finally, a message arrived at Vex Prime. It was from Captain Menu. "To the Galactic Council," the message began. "You dismissed humanity as primitive. You left us to die. We fought anyway because that's what we do. We're currently holding the swarm at 7 key points along the frontier. We will continue to fight for as long as we can. But we're running out of ships, weapons, and people. If you want our help, if you want to learn how to fight this thing, contact us. Otherwise, stay in your crystal towers and watch the galaxy burn. The choice is yours." The message was blunt, harsh, and completely honest. It made half the council angry and the other half thoughtful. Ambassador was assigned to respond. She hated every word she had to write, but she wrote them anyway. "Captain Menu, the Galactic Council formally requests Earth's military assistance against the Null Swarm. We are prepared to discuss terms." Back on the Resilience, Menu read the message with a bitter smile. "They're not asking us to join them," he said to Doctor and Lieutenant. "They're asking us to save them." "What are you going to tell them?" asked. Menu thought about all the times humanity had been rejected, all the insults, all the dismissals, all the doors slammed in their faces. He thought about the 20,000 humans who had just died defending a galaxy that didn't want them. "I'm going to tell them that help comes with a price," Menu said. "And if they want to survive, they're going to pay it." Ambassador arrived on the Resilience expecting to give orders. She was used to other species bowing to the Council's authority. Instead, she found herself sitting across a simple metal table from Captain Menu, who looked at her with cold, tired eyes. "We need your military assistance," began. "The swarm will reach Vex Prime in 14 days. The Council is willing to provide you with resources and—" "Stop," Menu interrupted. "You're not understanding the situation. You don't get to tell us what to do anymore." Scales flushed with anger. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" Menu leaned forward. "You left 3 billion humans to die. You dismissed us as primitives. And now you come here asking for help like you're doing us a favor by letting us fight." "What do you want?" asked through clenched teeth. Entered the room carrying a data pad. The old soldier set it down in front of full membership in the Galactic Council for Humanity, effective immediately. Reparations for the colonies we lost while you were running. And complete military autonomy for Earth forces. We don't take orders from the Council. The Council takes advice from us." "Impossible," said. "The Council will never agree to." "Then the galaxy burns," Menu said simply. "We'll save who we can save. Our colonies, our people. The rest of you can face the swarm with your superior technology." Looked at the two humans with something she had never felt toward another species. Fear. Not fear of being hurt, but fear of being left behind. Fear of being irrelevant. "I'll take your terms to the Council," she said quietly. The Council debated for 6 hours while the swarm consumed another 2 star systems. Finally, they agreed. They had no choice. But Menu had one more condition. "We won't fight alone," he said. "There are dozens of species that the Council has dismissed, exploited, or ignored. The people like. The who mine your resources for poverty wages. The whos you took for a vacation resort. All of them. We fight together or we don't fight at all. You want to lead an army of rejects, said with disgust. I want to lead an army of survivors, Minyu corrected. Species who know what it's like to be underestimated, who know how to fight dirty because they've never had the luxury of fighting clean. Thus, the coalition of the dismissed was born. Ships arrived from across the galaxy. They brought small, fast vessels perfect for reconnaissance. They brought massive mining equipment that could be converted into weapons. They brought rage and a desire for revenge against a council that had stolen everything from them. A human logistics expert had the impossible job of making it all work. She was a small woman with hair who had spent her career managing supply chains for Earth's colonies. Now, she sat in a command center, coordinating hundreds of species with different technologies, different languages, and different needs. They eat methane, she said, rubbing her temples. They need high-pressure environments. They require darkness to sleep. And somehow I'm supposed to make them all work together on the same ships. You managed Earth's colonies during the food crisis of '87, her assistant reminded her. You kept 3 billion people fed with half the resources you needed. You can do this. Sighed and got back to work. Doctor found herself leading a team of from a dozen different species. Many of them had been dismissed by their own governments for unconventional thinking. Together, they shared knowledge that the Council had tried to bury. Evolution doesn't stop being true just because you don't like it, said a scientist named. The Council wants to believe they've moved past biology, but the swarm proves that biology always matters. They studied the swarm samples together, combining insights from species who understood life in ways the Council had forgotten. They created new chemical weapons, new biological agents, new ways to exploit the swarm's organic nature. Meanwhile, the swarm continued its advance. It reached the outer edges of the Council's core territories. Vex Prime's crystal towers began to crack as dark masses pressed against the planet's shields. Admiral looked at the tactical map and saw the impossible situation clearly. The swarm surrounded them on 3 sides. If they tried to fight it head-on, even with the coalition, they would lose. We need a different approach, he said to his command staff. We can't kill the swarm. It's too big, too adaptable, but maybe we can starve it. A human physicist named Sumi stepped forward. She was young, barely out of university, but she had been studying the swarm's energy readings. The rift in the nebula is still open, she said. The swarm is being fed by whatever is on the other side. If we could close that rift, the swarm would be cut off from its source, finished. How do we close a dimensional rift? We don't, Sumi said with a terrible smile. We destroy it. The nebula has an unstable star at its center. If we could trigger it to go supernova, the radiation burst would collapse the rift. That would also destroy everything in 10-star systems, someone objected. Those systems are already dead, said coldly. The swarm consumed them. We're not talking about saving them. We're talking about making their sacrifice count. The plan was named Operation Firebreak. It was desperate, dangerous, and humanity's last good idea. The coalition fleet gathered every ship they had. Over 3,000 vessels from 40 different species, most of them flying under human command for the first time. They formed a massive line between the swarm and Vex Prime. All ships, this is Admiral, the old soldier broadcast. In a few hours, we're going to do something insane. We're going to make the galaxy's largest bomb, set it off, and pray the swarm dies before we do. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time. Not a single ship left the formation. Lieutenant led a strike team of the fastest ships toward the nebula. Their job was to deliver Sumi's device to the unstable star and activate it. The swarm seemed to sense their importance and threw everything at them. Ships died by the dozens, watched friends and strangers torn apart by dark tendrils, but they kept going because stopping meant the death of the galaxy. was aboard one of the support ships, treating wounded as they came in. Her medical bay was covered in blood from a dozen different species. She worked until her hands shook, saving who she could, watching others die despite her best efforts. "Why are we doing this?" asked a young soldier, bleeding from a wound in his side. "The Council never cared about us." "We're not doing this for the Council," said, her hands steady as she sealed his wound. "We're doing this because someone has to, because if not us, then who?" Ship reached the star. It was massive, burning blue-white and ready to explode. Sumi's device was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. It would destabilize the star's core, triggering a supernova weeks before it would naturally occur. "Device deployed," reported, activating in 3, 2, 1. The star began to die, and in dying it would save the galaxy. The star didn't explode gently. It went supernova in a blast of light and radiation that could be seen from half the galaxy. The explosion tore through the nebula like a wall of fire, vaporizing everything in its path. The dimensional rift tried to stay open. Energy poured through from the other side, fighting against the supernova's force. For a moment, reality itself seemed to scream. Then the rift collapsed in on itself and vanished. The null swarm suddenly stopped moving. Without the connection to its home dimension, it was cut off from whatever fed it, guided it, gave it purpose. The dark masses hung in space, confused and dying. "All coalition forces advance," Admiral ordered. "Hit them while they're weak. Don't give them time to adapt." The coalition fleet surged forward, fired. Chemical weapons detonated. Nuclear missiles turned the void bright with atomic fire. The swarm tried to fight back, but it was starving now. Each piece they destroyed wasn't replaced. Each adaptation took longer. The battle lasted for 3 days. 70 hours of continuous fighting as the coalition pushed the dying swarm back, system by system. Ships ran out of ammunition and rammed the swarm masses directly. Crews worked until they collapsed from exhaustion, then got up and worked more. On the Resilience, Captain Minu stood on his bridge and watched the tactical display. Each blue dot was a coalition ship. Each red mass was swarm. Slowly, impossibly, the blue was winning. "Captain," said his communications officer, "I'm receiving surrender signals from the remaining swarm masses." Minu frowned. "Surrender? I didn't know they could communicate." Doctor appeared on the bridge, exhausted but alert. "They're not communicating. They're dying. Those signals are just random noise from their failing biology." "Then finish it," Minu ordered. "All ships destroy the remaining swarm, leave nothing." It took another day. When it was over, the galaxy was littered with the corpses of the swarm and the wreckage of coalition ships. The cost had been terrible. Earth had lost 6 colonies completely, 400 million humans dead. The coalition species had suffered similar losses. 40% of the galaxy's inhabited worlds were gone, either consumed by the swarm or destroyed by the fighting. But the swarm was defeated. The galaxy had survived. On Vex Prime, the Galactic Council met in a chamber that was damaged by the battle. Crystal towers had fallen. Whole sections of the planet's surface were. Ambassador stood before them, her scales no longer bright and proud but dull and weary. "The humans demand their seat on the High Council," she reported. "They also demand seats for the coalition species. They want to reform our entire government structure." "Do we have a choice?" asked council member. "No," admitted, "we don't." The vote was taken. For the first time in galactic history, the council expanded, not with advanced species but with survivors, species who had proven themselves not through technology but through courage and sacrifice. Captain Minu was appointed to the High Council. He accepted the position without joy. Too many had died for him to feel victorious. But he did feel something else, purpose. "We're not here to take revenge," Minu said in his first address to the council. "We're here to make sure this never happens again. The galaxy dismissed too many species, ignored too many voices, forgot too many lessons. That ends now. Became the head of the reformed Galactic Defense Force. He immediately began changing how the military operated. Energy weapons remained, but so did kinetic weapons. Chemical defenses were studied and stored. The primitive weapons that saved the galaxy became standard equipment. Hope for peace, told his new recruits from across the galaxy, but prepare for war, and never ever forget that survival doesn't care about elegance. Doctor established the academy on Earth. Scientists from hundreds of worlds came to study there, learning that diversity in thinking was just as important as diversity in biology. The council species learned about evolution, adaptation, and the messy reality of life from humans and coalition teachers. The universe doesn't care about your theories, would tell her students. It only cares about what works. Stay humble, stay curious, and never assume you know everything. But the victory came with deep scars. Memorial stations floated throughout human space, each one bearing the names of the dead. Lieutenant visited them often. He had survived the war when so many of his friends hadn't. On one visit, found him floating near a memorial that listed his squadron members. She had saved countless lives during the war, but she knew that guilt wasn't logical. "You did what you could," she said gently. "We all did." "I keep thinking about that soldier," replied. "The one who asked why we were fighting. I told him it was because someone had to, but I never got to tell him that it mattered, that he mattered." "He knew," said. "They all knew, that's why they fought." The galaxy slowly rebuilt. Human engineers helped reconstruct destroyed worlds. Coalition species shared resources and knowledge. The old hierarchy of the council began to break down, replaced by something more equal, more honest. But the astrophysicist who had first detected the rift kept watching the stars. In her lunar station, she monitored deep space with equipment that was better now, funded by a grateful council. One night, her sensors detected something, just a small fluctuation in quantum readings far out in unexplored space. Nothing like the rift that brought the swarm, but something. She sent a report to Captain Minu, now council member Minu. He read it and smiled grimly. "Another threat?" he asked when he called her. "Maybe," admitted, "or maybe just a natural phenomenon. But this time, I know people will listen when I send a warning." "We'll investigate it," Minu promised. "Together, that's how we do things now." The galaxy had learned its lesson. It had learned that dismissing voices was dangerous, that primitive and advanced were just words that meant nothing when survival was on the line, that working together, even with species you didn't like or understand, was better than dying alone. Humanity hadn't just saved the galaxy, they had changed it. Years later, a young human girl named sat in a classroom on Earth. Her teacher was a who had fought in the war. The lesson was about the null swarm and the coalition of the dismissed. "Why did they call it that?" asked. "The coalition of the dismissed." The teacher's alien features shifted into what might have been a smile. "Because that's what we were. The species the galaxy thought didn't matter. The primitives, the poor, the ignored. But we showed them that being dismissed doesn't mean being defeated." "Are there still dismissed species?" asked. "No," the teacher said. "Not anymore. Now we're all just people trying to survive together. That's the real victory your ancestors won." Far above Earth, at the site where Threshold Station once stood, a new station orbited. It was built by 50 different species working together, a symbol of the new galaxy. On its central plaza was a monument with words in every known language. In human English it read, "They dismissed us. We saved them. We became equals. Never forget." The galaxy had changed, and it would never dismiss anyone again. Captain Minu, now old, and stood before that monument during its dedication. He thought about all the people who had died to make this moment possible. All the sacrifice, all the pain, all the stubborn human refusal to give up. "We stepped in," he said quietly to himself. "When the galaxy dismissed us, we stepped in anyway, because that's what humans do." Behind him, the combined fleets of the galaxy hung in space. Human ships next to cruisers, next to scouts, next to vessels from species that hadn't even had names in the old council. The galaxy was whole, flawed, damaged, but whole, and if another threat came, they would face it together. As equals,